Well, welcome everyone. My name is Ann Wagner and I'm here with Amy Evans, and we'll be talking about the Yoga and Ayurveda program. I'm going to share some slides here. Okay, well, welcome. This is our opportunity to discuss the yoga teacher training program with Portland Community College. It's an opportunity to deepen your yoga practice. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to become a yoga teacher, but it does provide you with the ability to receive certification and also to register. Okay. Thank you for the message there. And a little bit about myself. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. I have a master's in Ayurveda from Mount Madonna Institute, and my focus while I was there was on Ayurvedic herbs and protocols for prevention of cancer recurrence. A yoga therapist and work, and I'm certified with the Institute for, the International Association of Yoga Therapy, as well as a registered yoga therapist with Yoga Alliance. Amy, can you monitor the chat and let me know if there are any questions that I should?
Yes, I actually just sent you a note that I didn't see that. So.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I have been working in yoga and Ayurveda and teaching yoga for 25 years. I first started in New York City and studied there in the Ishta style of yoga. And then more recently, I have been studying with a yoga teacher, Jyoti Vernon. And I'm really excited to be part of this program with Amy Evans, who might introduce herself right now.
Certainly. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're able to join us. My name is Amy Evans, and I also work for Portland Community College in a really unique department, the Institute for Health Professionals. I'm really excited to be able to get to develop trainings, especially around integrative healthcare for healthcare providers, as well as people looking to for personal enrichment and development in integrative healthcare, and others who are looking to enter the field. I've always had a real passion for a more holistic approach to healthcare, and I was a massage therapist and energy practitioner, and I'm really excited that we've been able to develop this program and have expanded it with the 300-hour and are continuing to explore options to serve the yoga community.
Thank you, Amy. Well, it's wonderful to have you here today. And one of our other faculty with the program is Mary Harju, who is a practitioner of yoga in the Portland area and is a real expert in anatomy. So she'll be teaching our anatomy segments and really does a wonderful job of linking together some of the Western anatomy with some of the yogic and Ayurvedic anatomy. And we have some other professionals who will be with the program. Natasha Korshak, who's in Tucson, Arizona. So it's really nice doing some of this on Zoom and remotely. We're able to include some experts who are in other states and other locations. And she was the former director of yoga at Miraval Resort and Spa. She's a Vedic astrologer and yoga teacher trainer. And Jeevani Eigen, who is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, she used to be in Portland, however, has a master's in Ayurveda, and she's a cranial sacral therapist, as well as an Ayurvedic health practitioner. And she does a really wonderful job of presenting some pranayama practices that can be healing. So she's part of our program and takes us through some of the pranayama practices that can be very healing and beneficial. Then Cynthia Russell, who's in Tucson, is a music therapist and has extensive music training. She's been a professional performer And she does this wonderful job of bringing the Sanskrit sound into practice and mantra, and just even the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet can be a mantra and can be something that can be very inspirational, and the vibrations can really help to shift and change. So one of the things that we've just been talking about this week in the class is a process of shifting some of our mental outlook. If we had one that we wanted to shift into a more positive direction, looking at the many ways to do that, and chanting is just a really wonderful way to bring that into a practice. So I'm sure all of you are here because you know a little bit about yoga and perhaps about Ayurveda as well. And the question may arise about what is yoga? So yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means to yoke or bind or join together. And there's often an image shown of two oxen who are yoked together as a representation of the image of yoga. And it can be this unifying force of the polarities of Ha, sun, and Ta, moon. So you may have heard of Hatha yoga, which is this bringing together or balancing of the polarities. And it could be the polarities of mind and body, the polarities of left and right in our body, left hemisphere of the brain, right hemisphere of the brain, all of the different polarities that exist in this three-dimensional world in which we exist can be brought into or harnessed and brought together. But one of the things that's so interesting that Jyoti Vernon asks is, how can we join anything that has not been separated? And so she redefines yoga as remembering the oneness that already is. So it's this way of removing the veils, the impediments that prevent us from seeing the oneness that already is. And one of the teachers, so Rama was a very influential teacher for me, and she was very active in the 60s in yoga, brought a lot of teachers to this country from India. She brought Iyengar to California and started the Iyengar Institute. Satchidananda was another guru who sort of came and traipsed through her living room as she was having all of these different swamis coming through and teaching people yoga in California in the 60s. And Satchidananda was one of those who came through, and who she was able to learn quite a great deal from. And Rama was there when Satchidananda was asked, do I have to be a Hindu to practice yoga? And Satchidananda said, a Hindu? No, yoga is an undo. So in yoga, we're undoing all of the different impediments that may have been in the way, the veils that have prevented us from seeing the oneness that already is. So yoga is a spiritual practice, and it can be done in conjunction with any other religious beliefs that one has. Yoga is a physical practice, but there are also some practices that are related to the breath, and some different observations in the 8 limbs of yoga that can be done that are a little bit deeper than just some of the physical practices. So in the 200-hour and the 300-hour program, we cover a variety of topics. And I think some of you are here to learn a little bit more about the 200-hour program, and some of you are interested in the 300-hour program. We do look at anatomy and physiology from a Western lens and also from a yogic and Ayurvedic lens. We look at yoga philosophy. So yoga philosophy is that which is in the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali was the author of the Yoga Sutras, and this system of looking at the world that is 5,000 years old. So, and also yoga philosophy is based on Samkhya philosophy, which is also the philosophy that is very influential in Ayurveda. So there are lots of pieces of ancient wisdom that we will be learning from yoga and Ayurveda. We can also take a look at the Yoga Sutras and see how they apply today to topics of equity and inclusion, ethics, and conflict resolution. And this is something we're really going to be diving into a little bit more deeply with the spring term for the 300-hour program. So if that's something that you're interested in, we'll be talking more about the kleshas in yoga. Those are some of the impediments that are often related to the ego or fear of death, and how that can be an underlying issue in a lot of the different conflicts that arise. So we look at the different systems of the body from a Western and an Ayurvedic lens: the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, muscular, skeletal, and nervous system, and respiratory system. And the way this course has been designed is a year-long program. So both the 200 and the 300-hour programs are year-long programs, and there are 4 modules per term. So we look at the different systems of the body that are related to what might be going out of balance for that season. So as we lead into the spring season, we'll be focusing a little bit more on the respiratory system. That's one of the ones that can go out of balance when there is more earth and water prevalent in the world in the spring season. So the spring officially starts in a few weeks around the equinox. And so this is a great time of year to do a little bit of cleanse, and that can help the respiratory system to be more healthy. And then also, unfortunately, this year with the pandemic, there are many reasons that we might be interested in respiratory health and ways to keep the body balanced. And there may be acute respiratory issues that can be balanced with some of the yoga and Ayurvedic approaches, and then also preventative in terms of reducing inflammation. And that's also something that can happen for some of the COVID long haulers. And so there are techniques discussing that really have a practical application. So these classes are designed to provide you theoretical information, but also to put into practice what we're talking about. But with the Yoga Sutras, and then we'll be doing some work looking at some approaches to teaching methodology, sequencing, techniques for teaching, both at the 200 and 300-hour level. So we go a little bit more in depth with the 300-hour program. And there are many different ways to bring ourselves into balance and maintain that balance. And balance isn't a place where we just arrive and then everything is balanced and then we're good forever. But balance is a place where we're constantly working on finding a way to stay healthy and continue to enjoy the joy and bliss of being in balance. Okay. So why practice yoga? The way we do our yoga practice is the way we do our life, says Jyoti Vernon. So if there are things that we want to change, if there are new habits that we want to set up, new approaches, then we can do this in our life by the way we practice yoga. So if we practice yoga with a very quiet, content, intentional practice, we can bring some of these elements into our daily lives. So there is yogic anatomy and yogic philosophy that we can understand that can help us understand more about ourselves. When we do our practice work, so the class is set up, so the first hour is lecture, the classes are after work, so 5:30 or 6 p.m. until 8 or 8:30, and the classes vary in time a little bit. They're set up so that you can eat your dinner, maybe have some time to digest as we have lecture, and then afterward we do our yoga, and there'll be demonstrations. So I'll be demonstrating some yoga poses. We do partner work with the Zoom. So this is all virtual at this point, and we do focus on the breath. So there are different subtle aspects that we bring into our learning for yoga. We will take some time to understand mudra, which are hand gestures. So you may have seen different hand gestures and they have different meanings. One of the most common ones that you may have seen or not, I'm not sure, is the one where the thumb and index finger are joined. And this is called Jnana Mudra. It's the wisdom of knowledge. So as we come into awareness of our opposable thumb, it's said that this is the source of our knowledge. So with Jnana Mudra, we can practice that in a meditative seat. We can practice it in our different shapes. So an asana is a posture or a shape. So we can practice mudra while we're in asana. There are also points that are called marma points that are like acupressure points where muscle, tendon, nerve come together. And so these are different activation points in the body that can help to bring balance. Bandhas are subtle energy locks, so we can shift the energy within the body to bring balance. And then there are some different cleansing and kriyas that we'll be practicing. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. So this is, and now we begin the study of yoga. So we're always coming back to this place of now, this point of being fully present in the moment in which we exist. There are a couple textbooks that are used in the 200-hour RYT, Registered Yoga Teacher program. There's one yoga book and one Ayurveda book. And the textbook of Ayurveda is by Vasant Lad, and it's a really wonderful, detailed textbook for Ayurveda. And we'll be looking at the different systems. And this book, you just purchase one book and then you'll be using it for all 4 terms. And the other book that we use in our class is Rama Jyoti Vernon's yoga book, The Practice of Myth and Sacred Geometry. So Rama does a wonderful job of explaining many different postures and their mythic meanings, as well as their anatomical meanings. Sacred geometry is yantra. So as we bring ourselves into a pose, like triangle pose, we're also bringing ourselves into this sacred geometry, this shape where we are transcending our current reality into these different shapes like yantras. So yantras are geometrical patterns. And so we have one yoga book and one Ayurveda book for the 200-hour program. And then in the 300-hour program, we will continue to use, as well as an anatomy book by Leslie Kaminoff, and also an anatomy and asana book by Susie Hately, and then work with Patanjali's Yoga Sutras for the philosophy. There's also a wonderful book by David Coulter on anatomy of Hatha Yoga. And there's also a textbook of Ayurveda by Vasant Lad that can be nice additional books for that program. And those books, again, just need to be purchased once, and then they'll be used for all 4 terms of the program. So reality changes as consciousness changes. That may sound like a strange concept, but as we shift our understanding and our perception, there are many changes that can change the reality around us. There are all of these different brain waves that we have, alpha, beta, theta, delta. And as we begin to shift our consciousness, not just our consciousness at the conscious awareness level, but the subconscious and the deeper states of our awareness, there are these profound and deep changes that can affect the world around us and how we see ourselves. So there is soul consciousness that we may become aware of, cosmic consciousness, or maybe even divine consciousness or unity consciousness. As we bring our sense of awareness to this present moment and to being fully conscious and aware. So both of these programs help us to be more fully conscious, present, and fully aware, and primarily through being able to access our breath, the inhale and the exhale, as we begin to slow them down and begin to really connect with our breath, we might begin to shift and see the world differently around us. So there are different ways that we can create a calm mind. There are yamas and niyamas, which are the first two limbs of yoga. And these are the first 5 of those yamas. So ahimsa, which is nonviolence, is the first one. Satya is truthfulness. Asteya is non-stealing. Aparigraha is non-greed, non-hoarding. And brahmacharya is moderation of the senses. So we will be taking a look at these yamas in more detail. And we look at this both at the 200-hour program and at the 300-hour program level. In yoga, ahimsa or nonviolence is one of the most important, and therefore it's listed first, principles. And so that's something that we will be bringing into all of our practices. So Rama Jyoti Vernon, this is a picture of her, has really studied the shoulder stand quite extensively. And there are ways, even if one can't do a shoulder stand, that one can get benefits of doing different practices that are the shoulder stand taken into different, into its different elements. So by doing a little bit of shoulder opening through the heart center, we can begin to find some of the awareness that happens with a shoulder stand. So there are beginner and advanced sequences that we'll be looking at in this book, The Practice of Myth and Sacred Geometry. Rama has different series outlined. And one of the things that she does, and that we'll be doing in this class, that's so unique and original, is finding the counterpose within the pose. So often when we practice yoga, we may do something like a gentle back bend, and then after we're done, come into child's pose to find a little counter pose. So we're lengthening the lower back in child's pose and opening through the shoulders in a back bend, but it can be possible to find the counter pose within the pose. So here in the example of shoulder stand, we might be able to find a way for the middle spine, the thoracic spine, to move inward as the lumbar spine lengthens. And we find a little bit of a forward fold. So we can find these opposite poses within one pose and roll the shoulders down, lengthen through the spine. And there's just an amazing expansion that can happen both at a physical level and at a mental level. So the spine can really expand. I had one student in just one term, they grew 3/4 of an inch. They didn't really grow that much. I mean, they lengthened their spine. They weren't in a growth spurt, but there had been some collapse. And then through this class, they were able to lengthen the spine. So when there's physical lengthening of the spine, then there can be this also mental expansion and opening. And we'll look a little bit at back breathing and some of the elements of back breathing that can help to lengthen the spine. And we'll take our yoga, as they say, off the mat as we look at how to practice some of the yamas off the mat. So there are some home play exercises that go along with the program, and it's not that much. So if you're in a job and you don't have that much time, it's maybe only 5 hours per term of some reading and some assignments. And this hopefully will all be relevant to what you're working on in terms of your own personal practice. So it should be something you enjoy and that's really beneficial. There's also some reading, journaling, and reflecting that we'll be doing. And the exercises are designed to help broaden and expand awareness in different ways: emotional, spiritual, physical. The imagination releases powerful internal forces that can bring about astonishing change. If we set an intention for ourselves and we really work on manifesting what we really envision, it's amazing the changes that can happen and what can unfold. So people may ask, who will the other students in the program be, or who would be interested in this program? And a lot of the people who are participating are either current or aspiring healthcare practitioners. So we have people who are massage therapists, RNs, nurse practitioners, nutritionists, homeopaths, NDs, MDs, chiropractors, acupuncturists, physician's assistants. There's respiratory therapists who were in the class recently, medical assistants, people who are practicing cranial sacral therapy, fitness professionals, and others who are interested in this health learning. So it's a real interdisciplinary group, and we do take time for discussion and breakout rooms so that you have an opportunity to learn from some of your peers. And it's amazing what people have to share. So the 200 and the 300-hour programs can be combined. So if you complete the 200-hour and then the 300-hour, at the end, you'll be a 500-hour registered yoga teacher. And this is something that's recognized by Yoga Alliance. So it's a year-long evening training program. And for each of the 4 terms is based on each of the seasons. So you can take one term and then come back and take another term. You can join at any term, and we're getting ready to start our spring season next. So the format for the 200-hour class is Tuesday and Thursday, and it's 2.5 hours per day, so 5 hours a week. The 300-hour program is on Wednesday evenings, and then we have 2 weekend immersions, which are just these really wonderful opportunities to practice yoga, to dive into things a little bit more deeply, to speak with some of the other people in discussion. And these 18-hour weekends will then enable the total hours for the term to be 75 hours. So 75 hours times 4 terms is how you get to the 300 hours for the 300-hour program. And this program is open to distance learners, to people who may be as far away as Portugal and Switzerland. We've had people from all over, but right now we are offering this program in the evenings in Pacific time. So if you're calling in to learn about this program, this is around the time that we'll be having the program. So if you're on the East Coast, you may be staying up a little bit later for the program. So we have lecture in the first segment of the class, and then we have practice. We'll be doing chanting, pranayama, our breathing practices, as well as the asana demonstration that I mentioned. And this is a picture of the different chakras. And so you see red at the bottom, and then that's Muladhara chakra, the base chakra. And we'll be looking at the different chakras, the different energy centers, but the 2 base chakras, red and orange, that provide our stability, our strength, our sense of groundedness to the earth, are what we'll be focusing on, and different aspects of that with the 300-hour class in the spring term. So we've been sort of looking at and immersing ourselves in concepts of one or two of the chakras for each term with a 300-hour program. And with a 200-hour program, we're bringing together yoga and Ayurveda. So you're learning about both of these systems together. For those who are interested in the 300-hour program, we have 2 weekend immersions. It'll be April 20, 21, 22 for the spring term, and May 2021-22. And you can see here that it's a Friday evening and then Saturday all day and then Sunday morning. And since we're doing, it's sort of like a retreat or a little yoga ashram when we get together for these sessions. But since we're not live, I'm alternating it between pre-recorded sessions and live sessions because as a lot of school kids have found out, it's hard to sit still or to be in a class all day on Zoom. So I recognize that while we're in these Zoom times, we can't be staring at a screen for the whole day. But if that does work for you, if you're okay with that, you can attend the whole day. So some people like to do the pre-recorded sessions as we record them during the term, and some people like to do it all in one weekend. So it sort of depends on what your preference is. So the 300-hour spring term we'll be looking at some of the different chakras and balancing for the respiratory system, as I mentioned. For the 200-hour Ayurvedic Yoga Health Program, this spring term, we'll be looking at Ayurveda Yoga and Cleansing, which is called Panchakarma. Karma is action and Pancha is 5. So there are 5 cleansing actions, and we'll be understanding a little bit of the theory about those, but they can be very strong actions that can really help to cleanse the body. So we won't necessarily be practicing all of those, or there's no requirement to practice those, but we will look at different systems for finding health and balance, and how to look at purification of the body, oleation of the body. So sometimes after a long dry winter, or if we've been inside a lot, the skin may be dry, the digestive system may be dry. So having healthy oils internally, having ghee, which is a boiled butter, it's a refined butter, is a nice oil, or olive oil or flax oil. Having healthy oils in your diet, especially this time of year, can be really beneficial, as well as external oleation, and just general resetting can be so balancing. And I'm just finishing up my cleanse. So I can tell you how amazing it is to do a reset, and just the shifts that we can find in the body naturally just by omitting a few things from our diet. And we can bring them back later, but it's nice to take a break every once in a while. So in the 300-hour spring term, we're looking at daily lifestyle, yoga, and ethics. As I mentioned before. And the 300-hour program is also designed to look at the different systems of the body that may go out in the different seasons, so that we can really work on finding balance. So we're just finishing up the winter term right now. We've been looking at mental balance, mental clarity, and how to work on that, especially in the winter time when the days are shorter and there may be a little bit more nervousness or anxiety. Then there are some specific techniques that can be really balancing. So the 300-hour program in the spring term looks at ways to balance the respiratory system, different breathing practices. So there's alternate nostril breathing, there's breath of fire, there are a variety of different breathing practices that we'll be looking at. And, you know, I've been reading in the paper about when people who've had COVID, had to be pronated, turned onto their belly so that their breath can move into the back ribs where there's more, to increase their oxygen capacity. And so we've been able to see the benefits of back breathing. So we'll be looking at back breathing, explorations of mudra and bandha, and ways to balance the koshas. So there are these different sheaths, the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the wisdom body, and the bliss body. So these are all different koshas that we will be looking at balancing, and the relationship between consciousness, Purush, and matter, Prakriti. And all of this, as we oxygenate the body and find healthy foods and spices in our diet and lifestyle, it can help to reduce inflammation, which is so important for balance. This is the summer session. So I don't know if some of you are coming to this informational session now, or if you want to learn about the summer session. In the summer, we look at the gastrointestinal system. So that's one of the systems that can go out of balance in the summer. Sometimes people in the summertime have potato salad that's been sitting out at room temperature too long, or there might be loose stools. So figuring out ways to really balance the digestive system is so important. And I've heard people say that you're only as old as your digestive tract. So if you can find health and balance in the digestive tract, then you can remain in a more youthful state. So balancing the GI system is important. We'll look at back bends, forward folds, twists, that same concept of finding the opposite pose within the pose, and then analyzing some of the adverse aspects of the kleshas on proper digestion. So if one were sort of a little more stuck in the ego state of mind, it can affect digestion. So there is definitely a gut-brain connection that we'll look at in the summer term, and even that lung-brain connection, not brain, lung-brain connection will be part of our discussion in the spring term. And as we bring the GI system into balance, one can address malabsorption, diabetes, obesity. There are a lot of different issues, hypertension, cholesterol, that can be balanced as we balance our digestive system. And Amy, I wanted to share a few practices. We might just do some breathing practices and a twist, but do you want to talk about the registration now and then we'll do some practice?
Sure, yes, I will go ahead and share. So for anyone who is ready to join the program, I wanted to make sure that you knew how to register for it. Always important and helpful. This link here will get you, if you are new to the PCC system, meaning you have never taken a class at PCC before or have created your student ID, you'll need to go to this link to create your student account. That process can take a few days because there's a manual portion of that to help protect identities. So just know that if you go ahead and start that, you may not receive your ID for during busy times, 3 to 5 days. During less busy times, it often comes in a day or two. So I will be sending you that link as well with the follow-up recording for this. Once you have your initial PCC ID, you can go ahead and register online or by calling the student accounts office and enrollment services. I'll give you that information on the next slide. If you have taken a class at PCC, even if it was 15 years ago under a different, like your maiden name or something, we have an account for you. So you can just call the phone number that is on the next screen, and then I'll also email you to find out what that is if it's been so long and you've forgotten it. Also wanted to make sure you have my email and Anne's email if you have any questions. I do coordinate the program, and so I can help a lot with some of the logistics. If you're having trouble reaching registration or student accounts, I can support that. Calendars, schedules, all kinds of things there. Obviously, Anne is the content expert, so if you want to know how deeply certain topics are going to be explored, she would be the best person for that. But you can always email me as well, and I can connect with her about that. Each course, whether it's the spring term 200 or the spring term 300, will have its own course registration number. Or we shorten that to mean CRN, or to be abbreviated as CRN, and it's a 5-digit code. So sometimes people get confused when they're looking at the system. There's a 4-digit code that's your CEU number that gets added to your transcript, but to actually register for the class, you're going to look for the 5-digit code. We'll provide those for you as well on the next slide and in the email. But if you're thinking about registering for future terms, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew what to look for in the system. And then, of course, if you're interested in learning more about either of the programs, you can go to this website to learn more about at least the 300-hour. We'll also send you the 200-hour one. And if you haven't already joined our mailing list, that's a great way to stay informed about when the next course is going to be offered, or if we're doing another webinar, or to receive some of the wonderful blog posts that Anne and others create to help just support sharing knowledge and healing through yoga. All right. And once again, here is that the how to enroll in PCC and get your student ID there. The second bullet shows those course registration numbers, or CRNs. As Anne mentioned, the 200-hour is comprised of 50 CEU hours per term, times 4 equaling 200. And then the second CRN is for the 300-hour program, or the 75 hours in the spring term. PCC does offer various interest-free payment plans if you'd like. So after you register, you can either pay online or pay by calling a student accounts office. And so you can use a credit card or pay by check if you'd like as a one-time payment, or you can set up various payment options. Most people pick the 3 payment plan option, but there is also a 5 payment plan option if that is easier for you. And you can go online to see when those payments are scheduled and due. I just usually search PCC payment plans and it pops up with the updated calendar and things for each term there. If you have any issues or need any support with registration or payment, that phone number, the 971-722-8888, is the central place to reach student accounts, different departments within that. Option 2 will get you to registration, and option 3 will get you to payment. And then my contact information is there as well if you'd like to call, get any questions answered, or be reminded of any of these processes. So, thanks. Anne, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you so much for sharing that information. That's wonderful. So thank you for all the information. I think we might put the link in the chat so that if people wanted to access it now, they could.
Yes, I will do that. And I'll put the link for both the 200 and the 300 as well in there.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I'm going to stop the screen share, but then maybe we can do a little bit of just seated breathing and stretching practice together, so you can see a little bit what that might be like. I'm going to so Amy's putting those links in the chat, and Amy, is it okay? I'm just going to spotlight myself and take us through a of breathing.
Great.
And and then at the end, I want to find out from those of you who are here which program you're interested in. But let's take a moment.
And before we do the breathing, in case people need to pop off early, could we open it up to questions?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone have any pressing questions, or are you all ready to do some breathing? You can either add your questions to the chat or unmute yourself and ask them.
I have a quick question. This is Annie.
Hi, Annie.
Here, I'll turn on my video here. I was wondering if you take the 300 level, do you do the retreats each season, and then will they be back in person maybe perhaps by the fall? That's, or are they all going to be online because we're all a worldwide thing, a worldwide, you know, there's students all over. That's what I meant.
Amy, can you answer about when you think we'll be in person again?
Well, that is the million-dollar question right now. So we know that we're going to be remote for summer. Some of us, my dean is guessing that we will probably continue to be mostly remote for the fall. We're making more and more exceptions for clinical-based programs, but because this program is not clinical, it will be gradually faded in. And of course, everyone is waiting to see how variants of COVID evolve and vaccinations and herd immunity is reached. So the college is definitely prioritizing safety and I expect them to continue to do so. That said, we are also mindful that we have opened this program up globally. So we will absolutely find a way to support people that start the program online. We're not going to change it so that somebody in North Carolina can't complete the program. So whether we offer a hybrid or whether we have a definitive date where we shift to online, from online, we're going to be exploring that with the technology as things evolve there. I think we do hope to be able to have some in-person option in the future, but right now we're committed to the online. Thank you. Great question. Looks like Ava has a question.
Hi, I have two questions. Let's see if I can put my video on. I have two questions. The first question is, how do you teach yoga training, teacher training online when you aren't able to correct postures physically?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what we're doing, it really is an opportunity to develop verbal skills in terms of how to correct posture by looking at someone and then providing verbal cues on how to adjust and make corrections. So we do adjustments, but it's done virtually. So we'll go into small rooms. If I were to spotlight, let me see, I'll just spotlight myself so you can see. So if there's one person who has the spotlight, and then if I were to come into a yoga pose and if I were, really rounding, and you were learning, how to provide cues, you could say, can you straighten your spine, bring the shoulders up, bring the shoulders back, adjust the head and neck. And so it really is an opportunity to develop those verbal skills to help people to find the adjustments without touching someone, to say, here, bring the shoulders in right here. So you're not physically touching someone, but verbally providing the cues and the information on how to make those adjustments.
Okay, great. And then my second question is, what percentage of the classes is about Ayurveda, and what percentage is of yoga? Or is it 50-50? Is it more yoga based, more Ayurvedic based?
It's maybe like 60 yoga, 40 Ayurveda.
Okay.
It's about 50-50, but we talk about yoga in the lecture, and then we're practicing the yoga in the classes. So it might be just a wee bit more of the yoga than the Ayurveda, but we also do some cooking classes, which is really fun. And now we're just doing those cooking classes virtually. So instead of us all being in a room and me doing cooking and you watching, in order to taste the food, you're going to have to buy the ingredients and make your own foods at home. But that's sort of a fun thing to do, because if we're we just did ghee in the 200-hour. So if you're making ghee for the first time and you're trying it on your stove and you're like, I have an electric stove, or I have a gas stove, and this is what my ghee looks like, and it's bubbling like this. And so we have the cameras with everyone's kitchens, and we can see what's going on, and you can say, no, you need to cook your ghee a little bit more. It's not quite done yet. And not tasting the same food altogether, but I think, it's amazing the way that we can really affect each other's energy through Zoom, through chanting, through the cooking, and do a lot of shifts that way. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
I'll go ahead and add that I have heard from the current students that they're really grateful for the opportunity to learn how to teach online, given all of the shifts and their anticipation that more people will be wanting to study yoga from the comfort of their homes. So we don't really know where the audience is going to prefer down the road. So this way you can learn both.
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Please, yes,
Yeah.
Andy.
And I apologize for being late, so you might have already said this, but at the end of the program, say I take the 300 hour, is there support from PCC in guiding students to, I don't even know what you do to become officially certified. What do you do to say I'm a RYT? I don't even know I'm just new in my searching here. So forgive my lack of knowledge here, but to take the next step to be somehow explain that I've done this class or that I've taken this training. Do you know is my question clear enough?
Yes. And the answer is yes, absolutely. We help you through that process. So at the end, thank you for your question, and this is a good one. And at the end of this program, then you will be a certified yoga teacher. So you'll get a certificate, and then that certificate you can take to Yoga Alliance digitally. You don't have to do anything in person, but you then submit that certificate with Yoga Alliance, and there are some questions and items that you need to fill out to become a registered yoga teacher. So that's the RYT. So you'll be at the end of the 200-hour program, then you would be a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. There are fees that you have to pay to Yoga Alliance on an annual basis, and those are not fees that are part of the program. So those would be fees that you pay on your own. And then there are annual ethics quizzes and continuing education requirements. And so you would need to pass those and continue to keep your education current in order to continue to maintain that registration so that you're recognized. But Yoga Alliance is a national yoga organization that you would then be certified and registered through. Okay, great.
Thank you. And Troy has a question.
I do, thank you. So I'm wondering, during the coursework and the curriculum for both the 200 and 300-hour trainings, do you cover any sort of trauma-informed considerations? So notions that maybe touching people or that sitting still and being quiet can be effectively dysregulating for folks, or just to kind of cover those sorts of considerations?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's very important. And we do look at that. And it's not only is it a requirement of Yoga Alliance that we cover some of these topics, but it's also something that we want to have as part of the curriculum. And right now we have a couple folks from the VA who are part of this program who have a lot of information that they've been sharing. And so we talk about how to use language that is inviting and non-triggering. And so there's trauma-informed yoga that we cover. And then we also have started to look at what it means to have resilience, because even in a world where people may be experiencing, it may take resilience just to walk down the street sometimes. And so it's on a day-to-day basis, how can we have the tools to be able to do the things best that we would like to do. We've just been having a conversation in class about the use of the word surrender, because it's something that is often said, like come into Shavasana, corpse pose, allow yourself to relax and just surrender to the earth, to gravity. And then that word surrender, you know, is that triggering? Is that not triggering? Is it okay to use that word? So, and I don't think there's any clear answers to a lot of these questions. So I think we have some discussions and leave it open. I mean, there's some definite things in terms of ethics that we want to cover and make sure that people know that it's not okay to do breast adjustments or something like that. I mean, we've heard all kinds of crazy things of what has gone on in the yoga world when people were touching before. So, I mean, there's some definite lines of things that are okay or not okay, but then there's some other things like language and wording that we're still figuring out. So you know, and I wouldn't say that I have all the answers, but we definitely want to have those discussions.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, great question.
Well, if there's no more questions, let's dive into some breathing.
Just one more question. When's the first class?
It's March 29th,
Okay.
Monday.
Class
Well,
starts the week of March 29th. So if you're in the 200-hour program, your first class would be on Tuesday, March 30th. And if you're in the 300-hour program for the spring, it would be on Wednesday, March 31st.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for asking. Any other questions? You can always email us afterwards as well. And do we have some time for your breath work, or did we eat up all of our?
well, let's just do one little thing that we can do in a chair. So come to a comfortable seat, allow the spine to be long and lengthened. Just take a few shoulder circles, roll the shoulders back. And then if you're in a chair, if you're in a place where you can do a gentle twist, just bring the right arm up overhead to the back of your chair. Allow the breath to move into the back body on the inhale. And as you exhale, lift up, maybe gaze over the right shoulder. Just allow yourself to release a little bit here. That as we spend so much time on computers or cell phones, there can be some rounding, so a little bit of opening and twisting can be nice. And then inhale, you can stretch both arms up overhead, come through the center, maybe turn your wrists a little bit, rotate in one direction and then the other. And then you can bring the left hand back behind you and allow the breath to expand fully into the back ribs. Exhale, lift and lengthen. You might gaze back over that left shoulder, or maybe close your eyes, allow the awareness to come a little bit more internal. And then gently come back to the center. You can interlace the fingers, bring your hands behind your head, and just allow the back of your head to sort of press back into the hands a little bit. Allow the hands to press in toward the head. And on the exhale breath, see if you can find a little bit of lengthening through the back of the neck, and then a little bit of lifting through the back of the head. And maybe even sort of press on your scalp as if your scalp were a wig or something, you know, how kids used to do. And see if you can lift the scalp up a little bit as you bring the pressure of your head back into your hands. This is where we process a lot of visual imagery from the day. And if we can bring our awareness sort of back to the occipital lobe, to the back of the head, either when we're on the floor reclined or seated, we can find a little bit more relaxation and activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. And then gently release the arms down by your sides. Come to a comfortable seat with the spine long and lengthened. And I invite you to join in an Om if you would like. I'll be doing 3 Oms. It doesn't always come through all the way on the computer, as it might in person, but let's just see what happens. And I'll be doing these ohms with the Sanskrit vowel sounds, ah, o, e, u, lur. So you can listen or join in however you'd like. Exhale completely. Inhale. 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 If you'd like, I invite you to bring your hands to your heart center. Just take a moment to rest in silence. And just thank yourself for taking a moment out of your day to connect with your mind, body, consciousness, awareness. May you all move into this evening with peace. Shanti, shanti, shanti.
Shanti.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you all. Wishing you a beautiful evening.